This is Caroline from Caroline's Adventure. We all face challenges in our lives. How do some people take those challenges and turn them into powerful results? Join me as we dig into a story on resilience, hope, and joy, and uncover lessons we can each use in our own lives. But before we start, please take a moment to show that 5-star rating button some love, and follow while you're there to be updated every time I release a new episode. Now, before we begin, a word of caution. On this podcast, we regularly discuss topics like sexual assault, suicide, and addiction, which may be disturbing to some. Please take care as you listen. And if you need support in the United States, reach out to the crisis text line at 741-741.
Well, I was looking through your bio. This is amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a humble man.
Though, that's the thing that I'm realizing more and more. I always kind of knew this, but the more I do these interviews and the more I just talk with people, the more I realize that there's no such thing. Like, everybody has got their amazing story of what they've overcome and who they've become because of it. And it's incredible to realize how many of us are carrying around these just really powerful stories.
Right.
And it's like not until you start talking to people that you realize how connected we all are because of this.
Following what you do every day, with your kids and everything, and some of the journeys you're on. It's just fascinating that people don't realize how important it is to connect with your kids, in nature and whatnot. And without, everything else that goes along with the daily hustle and bustle and everything. So,
and I'm kind of grateful for the opportunity to have them, because I didn't personally have much of a childhood, and it's so cool to go through it with them. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy this stuff as much as they do, because it's like my opportunity to kind of, people are always like, oh, it's so cool that you get down and play with them. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is my chance to experience what it's like to be a kid, and watching them interact with the world. Kind of, I don't know. It's been a neat opportunity for me to explore with them.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I look back on some of the stuff in my childhood, and I didn't really appreciate it. It was like, okay, how soon can we get this over with? How soon do we have to do this and get back to reality, whatever that may have been. But, it's just fascinating that you take time out, homeschooling your children, and, they seem to be thriving, in the environment, and that's what's important.
It depends on the day.
Yes. And I know we've had those days, I'm sure, but
some days I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. Another day I'm like, this is amazing.
Right. But, it is what you take the good with the bad. It is what it is and everything. So
I was looking through your bio, and I was kind of amazed, because I knew that you had been in the Marines, and I knew a little bit of that, but I love the fact that you took surviving what I'm guessing was pretty intense trauma and have taken that and created an advocacy from it.
I was adopted. My sister and I were adopted at age 2 from an orphanage in the Midwest. And what's funny is we were adopted by a couple of short white parents. And so, and all the situations that go along with that, being raised in predominantly white environments, being the only child of color, except for my sister, a lot of times.
Wow.
The challenges that it goes along with those type of things, people stare, and people always make comments, are those your parents? Well, yes, they are, and so being an adult adoptee is always something that, you want to give back to the community as much as possible. Other individuals that are experiencing things like that, you can be a resource for them, as well as just being a resource for people in general, because, a lot of people don't know a lot about adoption. They just assume, well, you're adopted, everything is great. Well, there's trauma that comes along with that. As you get older, you start experiencing, cultural differences. And, you know, my really first um, cultural experiences came when I went to college. Yeah, I went to a predominantly all-white high school, sprinkling of other cultures in there, but mainly it was white and rural Midwest. So, they're with the challenges as well. And just being able to overcome those things. And then when you get to a bigger, institution of a university, and then you're like, wow, I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how to do a lot of things that I thought were normal in my upbringing, but in reality, it was a sheltered life. So, you regret some of that, you regret some of the, well, what happens if I would have stayed in that environment? Would I have made it to this age? Because we were in the inner cities, and most time, back then, I don't want to age myself, but, um, you know, young males didn't make it to 21 a lot of times. So, you know, I feel fortunate that, I've made it to this age, through the ups and downs of various interesting paths, so to speak. And so, yeah, I do, I've always been someone that's always been looking for, you know, where I fit in a lot of times, where do I belong in the communities that I've lived in? Um, and so ultimately, it's always led me to people asking me, resource, can you do this? Can you do this? Well, sure. Just give me the parameters of what you want and I'll figure it out.
That's a superhero power, just so you know. The ability to like step outside of your discomfort and get in it and figure it out is what I am realizing more and more as I get older, is just what a powerful talent. And I don't even know if it's even truly a talent, because it is often just a choice and a willingness to be uncomfortable.
Right. And sometimes you get put in those situations where you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get put in those situations where, you know, life kind of throws a curveball at you and you either adapt to it or, you get swallowed up and, you don't end up making it in reality.
You're thrown into a situation where you don't really know what to do with it. How do you leverage that and actually use it for a good outcome, as opposed to getting so swallowed up in the uncertainty that you can't move forward? And having been in some crazy situations myself, I can see those people.
Mm-hmm.
You can look around and you can see those people where they are blanking out. They're like, I do not know what the hell to do right now. I can't even compute this. Like, this is out of my pay grade. I don't know what to do. And so having the ability that you do to go in and be like, I'll figure it out. You know what? Throw whatever you want to my way. I will figure it out. That is a superhero power.
Well, I appreciate that, but I just do it to help give back to the communities that I've lived in, because you always run into people, through my professional jobs that are always looking for someone to help them, and you can only help them so much, but then you figure out other resources that you can tap into and, spread that wealth around. And, because you just realize that if you don't, who's going to? If they've trusted you, they've built that relationship with you, it's very easy to say, you know what, I need this. Okay, well, and I've been, fortunate enough to survive a lot of things, or either make it, one way or another, or, you don't, and if you don't make it, why? I'm sure you've probably heard of David Goggins.
Yeah.
I was listening to one of his podcasts the other day, and he's like, we don't know how to fail, and no one's taught us how to fail. Everybody tries to teach you how to be successful, but no one teaches you how to actually fail. And after I got done listening to that podcast, I look back on several areas of my life where I truly have failed, but you figure it out, and how do I get through this? Sometimes when, door closes, as they say, another door opens, but how many other doors you have to close in front of your face in order for that finally that one door to open, and you go right through it, and you figure it out.
Well, and failures are where you really learn. Success is wonderful. Success feels amazing, and it is phenomenal, and it is where everybody's focused. But the failures are where you really learn and grow, because those are the times where you didn't hit the mark that you were going for. But lots of times, even the act of failing gets you closer to wherever you want to be.
Right.
Taking action in that path gets you somewhere closer to where you want to be. And even if you fail, I have long held the belief in my mind, too stupid to quit. I am too stupid to quit. And that is the point at which you fail, is where you quit and walk away. And
Right.
often, in my experience, the path from here to success, we all like to think of it as just linear. I start here, I go, and I succeed. But the truth is that between here and here to true success, there's a lot of ups and downs. And it's not, you're going to have failures along the way. And if you stop and walk away from the path at that failure, you don't have the opportunity to learn from it and do better the next iteration, and then fail, and then learn and do better. And, the huge successes in life never made it there overnight or by just straight to the top. And
Right. And then, when you look at that, a lot of successful people have made it later on in life.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, they never got to see the fruits of their hard work. But, you just look at, various entities that have made it in life. And because, everybody wants to hit that success, live the good life, whatnot. But reality is, it's a lot harder than what people think.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to be an entrepreneur. It's a lot harder to, get on a podcast, show your face in public, and being able to talk and being able to, deliver a message if necessary, or just connect with people. We've got social media, which is great, but you take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
Right.
It still fascinates me that anybody is interested in my day-to-day life, because like for me, it's purely like a record of like, here's the stupid thing I did today, or here's the crazy thing my kid did, or here's the funny thing we did, or here's a great memory from today in case this happens again. And so it fascinates me that people watch it, but it also, I never lose sight of the fact that, like, for me, it's my hit list. It's my, when I'm having a tough day, I scroll back 3 weeks before and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a great day. That was something awesome. Or there's something funny that happened, or yep, I fell in the mud again. Or, like it's,
we don't document the day-to-day stuff. A lot of times it's, look at me, the attention seeking, people that want people to look at them, notice them, because, sometimes in their day-to-day life, it doesn't happen like that. So, I do the social media, from a business perspective, and even so, you still got, people that creep into there, and you're just like, okay, what do you want? How is this going to relate to my business and whatnot? So, it's always, you just got to look at life and go, okay, how important is their life, or how unimportant is their life, where, they scroll through social media and then they want to comment on people's posts and, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it's like, just appreciate people for what they are, they're put on there. Like you said, you put a lot of stuff in there, you're exposing your kids to it, the vulnerability of that. And, you just sit there and you feel comfortable doing it, do it, and if people are going to judge you for it, hey, that's their issue.
They're going to judge regardless. That's the thing that they say that those that can do, those that can't teach, but that's not true. I've known tons of teachers who can do very well and take what they know and they pass it forward. And that's why they teach, is they want to share what they know with others. What I find is that those that can do and teach, those that can't criticize. And so whenever I get criticism, unless it's like something, and and I do sometimes sit with it and like analyze and be like, okay, is this a valid point? Do I need to address this in some way? Is this something that really is a shortcoming? But usually it's just a lot of empty noise. And as you said, like, you can run yourself exhausted and crazy chasing the empty noise if you let yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's end of the day, the question is, does it serve me?
Right. If you can sleep at night, that's all that matters.
Exactly.
You have a roof over your head, food on your table. It may not be the most wonderful food, but
it's better than a whole lot of the population out there.
And some of the food that you've posted, I'm like, wow, that looks delicious.
Dude, it is. I am fully convinced that vegans have a chip on their shoulder because everyone thinks that we eat like, twigs and mulch. And so like vegan chefs take it to the next level. I very, very rarely have a vegan meal where I'm not like, damn, that was amazing. And so like that feed, I'm all about like kind of educating the world of like, you know what, you can eat really healthy food and really nourishing, nutritious food and have it be amazing. And if you want to eat mulch and berries and twigs, go for it. Like that is an option too.
Yeah, I can imagine. I just like to eat.
Yes, same.
Period. So,
Same.
I like to experience different food, different cultures and things like that. But, at the end of the day, give me a good thick slice of beef and I'm happy.
Or vegan steak. Vegan steak is actually really good too. I was surprised by that because I thought that was like, no one goes vegan because they don't like eating meat. I take that back. Maybe, occasionally, but most vegans love meat. They just want something different. So tell me more about your serving, because that was one of the things that was interesting is that like your service is a huge part of what led you down your path to activism and to giving back.
Well, being in the service, you learn a variety of different ways how to adapt, overcome, it's about experiencing different cultures. If you're, I was fortunate enough to travel to different places and being able to experience different cultures and really learn to appreciate, what the struggles that people go through in different countries, whereas, sometimes we take it for granted. We just kind of come and go, not really realizing that we have the luxury to do that, where some people, they have to struggle, every day they struggle.
Yeah.
And, it almost makes you humble. A lot of times, some of the places I've been, a candy bar, the kids were happy as like a pig in mud just to get a candy bar because they've never had it. It's a treat to them. Some of the little trinkets that we had, kids were just overjoyed, because it was something that you gave them. We didn't think twice about it a lot of times, but it was just an opportunity to show people that, we're human. Yeah. And, going into service was different for me than I think for a lot of people because, I chose to do it. I walked away from a full scholarship, athletic scholarship, to join the service after my freshman year because I needed self-discipline.
Wow.
I had discipline, but I thought I needed more. And originally I was going to go in to be an officer with my brother, but he decided not to join at the time I did. So I just went and enlisted, and, it opened my eyes to a lot of different things, pushing myself beyond the limits that I thought I already achieved, but knowing that I could go further. I was pushed further. I had two best friends that went in Navy, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing the Navy. So I joined the Marine Corps, and I walked in the recruiter's office and said, hey, I want to do whatever you want, and they're like, well, you scored high enough, you can probably do a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, but I just want to do infantry. And they were just like, why? I go, because that's, everybody learns differently. And to me, that allowed me to challenge myself a lot more. physically, emotionally, mentally. It gave me the desire so that after I got out, after 10 years, it gave me the ideas that, I can succeed in pretty much anything. I can overcome, adapt, and still make it, despite the circumstances, and if people are gonna judge you for that, that's on them. But, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes along with that. You know, I guess I'm very regimented. I'm very, task oriented, task driven in my daily life. I mean, my kids hated it growing up a lot of times, but, they've adapted to it. I was talking to my daughter, she's out in Connecticut at school, and I was talking to her this morning and we were talking about different traits. And I'm like, she's adapted some of the traits that I have, that I've learned. And she's like, well, thanks. You couldn't give me the height, but you gave me the trait. I'm like, sorry. So, you have to figure that, yeah, they probably hated it growing up, but they've learned lessons that they're utilizing today in their adulthood, and learning how to survive. I mean, name of the game after COVID's been survival a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so,
Very true.
I think they've adapted to, that. My oldest daughter, she's 21. She's like, I got a new job. I'm like, who did your resume? Because I usually do it. She's like, I did it. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess you are learning, and just things that I see them doing stuff every day. And I'm like, okay, that really makes me proud. I've still got high schoolers as well, and they're adapting in what they're doing. So I mean, even though I think they probably could have been brought up better, they've learned how to take what challenges they've had in their own personal lives and have overcome them.
Well, I mean, that's the thing as a parent, is that you're never going to completely knock it out of the park. And that's
Right.
part of the learning process for them is, you're going to do the best that you know how to do. Growing up, I always used to think my biggest goal in life is to give my children a life, an upbringing that they don't have to recover from. When I would lay there at night and feel so unlovable and so unwanted and so just desperate for a different life. And I would create in my mind what kind of life I wanted my children to have. And I saw it as an opportunity to fix all the things that I saw missing. I was never going to hit my kids. I was never going to say things to them that made them feel just completely unloved. I wanted to be able to travel with them. I wanted to be able to give them horseback riding lessons. I wanted to give them an amazing education. Like, these are the things that I was like, I absolutely wanted to make certain I give my kids. But I also have realized that I'm going to screw other stuff up. That's just the reality. Parenting is not, there's no such thing as perfect parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that I hope I give them is the skills that when they start to see the holes and that the emperor has no clothes on, that they realize that, what, nope, these things that she gave me don't serve me, but I have the resilience, I have the creativity, I have the curiosity, and I have the perseverance to overcome those things and to take on their own version of whatever success is. Who knows what that is?
Right. Everybody has their own versions of success.
Exactly.
And,
so
and people
give them that.
And that's the thing that, people judge other people by, what they think they should do, what they, and reality is the harder you push them to try to do something, the more they're going to push back. And, you got to let them find out who they are in their own world and, just teach them and support them so that, they feel valued. Sometimes they learn their lessons, life lessons that they go through because, living in a different generation where you ate what was placed in front of you. you
Yeah.
know, and, you know, you were home by when the street lights came on. You
Yeah.
know, some of the simple things that now it's like, you know, they're involved in athletics, they're involved in other outside activities that you didn't have those, at least when I was growing up, you didn't have a lot of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, you went and played outside
Yeah.
with friends, you know, and now you don't see as much as that because, you know, they're being in Arizona, their sporting events are year round. So, you know, that's what they live, you know, and they may have a couple weeks here and a couple weeks there where they're not involved in sports, but it's a luxury that teaches them how to manage their time. And it's a luxury that being able to have the opportunity to go out and practice, go out and do the things to make themselves better, knowing that, you know, the expectation that, you know, I have for them is a lot different. You know,
Yeah.
do I want them to win? Yes. Do I want them to lose? Of course, you know, because losing teaches them how to win.
So good.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, a lot of people are like, well, you know, like my daughter, she wanted to play football as a freshman in high school. And I'm like, you realize that these kids are twice the size of you? And she goes, yeah. She goes, but I think I can do good. And I'm like, go for it. Just don't get hurt. And she did her freshman year. She played. The coaches didn't give her a lot of, you know, playing time at the beginning, but, you know, she earned it by showing up every day. And towards the end of the season, the last couple games, they gave her the ball to run and she almost scored a touchdown. And
Wow.
everybody was like, where's she been all year? You know, and so, you know, and now she wrestles, you know, and she's, as a sophomore in high school, she's made it to state the last 2 years and, you know, she's done well, but she knows she can do better. And so, you know, just supporting her that way,
Yeah.
you know, not really pushing them to say, okay, you have to do this, you have to do this, you know, letting them find their own paths in life because, you know, sometimes we didn't have that, you know, opportunity. It was you either do this or you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, so you figure it out.
That's awesome though. And I mean, supporting her in that way, you're giving her such a gift of, you know, I see you, I accept you, don't really care what you do as long as it's something that is a path that feels right to you. And that is such a confidence building gift that you're giving her, because it's through doing the things that are unconventional and the things that are hard that we learn what we're really made out of.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's awesome that she's taking that chance, and it's awesome that you're supporting her in taking that chance.
You know, and sometimes you want them to live a different life.
Yes.
You know, but then if you push them into a lifestyle they're not comfortable with, you know, they're going to reject it. You know, like I said, I have a daughter out in Connecticut, you know, and she played 1 year of soccer and she's like, I don't like the school, I want to transfer. And I'm like, where do you want to go? You know,
Yeah.
they're paying for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
You know, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I talked to her this morning and she's like, well, there's other schools out here on the East Coast that I'm going to talk to, that I've been talking to. And I'm like, okay, you know, just as long as you know that this is what this is your life, this is what you need to do. You know, if you want your education and they're going to pay for it, take advantage of it.
Yes.
You know, and figure out how to be the person you got you the scholarships in the first place. So, you know, whether it's academic or athletic, you have that talent. So, you know, go for it. But, you know, you realize that it's not going to be easy. You know, she wanted to come home for a weekend. I'm like, no, can't do it. You know, it's $600, $700 plane trip. You know, and I'm like, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's just those type of things, you know.
And I wonder, like, how much of that comes from coming from a childhood of challenge and, you know, being adopted, like how much that has to do with helping you know how to teach them resilience, you know?
My mom she always taught me, or taught us, because she adopted all 5 of her children.
Wow.
And so she always taught us that, you've got to overcome your adversities. You can't let society dictate what you do, but you've got to overcome each and every adversity that you may have, and you got to figure it out. You can't rely on anybody else to give it to you. You got to go and earn it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and you mentioned in your bio that you're an amputee. Like, I would imagine having had an accident where I lost all of who I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was hard because I kept thinking, okay, I've got to get back to where I was. I want to get back to where I was. And eventually I had to come to that realization of that's never going to happen. I will never be back to who I was before. And I've got to figure out how to make the best of what I've got now. And I've got to figure out how to work within this new dynamic to have a better version of this, because this is not where I want to be. But so when you became an amputee, was that a challenge that you had to deal with of who am I now and how does this impact who I am going forward?
Not really, just because I've made up my mind a long time ago that if I'm going to live till 80, 85, whatever, I got to take the good with the bad. Going into the hospital, they're like, well, we're going to have to amputate your foot. And I'm like, okay, I guess I can be called Stumpy then. And, at the time, my wife and my kids were just like, that's not funny. And I'm like, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
After I got out of the hospital, I went to rehab for a month, and they're like, oh, you're going to be here for at least 3 months. Like, I'm leaving in 30 days. And they're like, no, you're not. I'm like, watch me.
Straight. Damn straight.
And so, I just, it's a new lifestyle.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people's mindset isn't prepared for it.
Yeah.
That I've noticed in social media groups I am part of, people are commenting, this is a new challenge. Yeah, it is, because your balance is off. You've got to figure it out. And it's difficult because you have to figure out, okay, if I'm going to go do this, what are the risks? So it just makes you more aware of different things. Walking down the street, is the sidewalk uneven, or
yes
a lot of times people don't understand going up and down a flight of stairs. Yes, it's easy, but if it's carpeting, you got to be aware of that. How high to lift your foot. Typical curb, I think, is 3 to 6 inches, and sometimes if you don't lift your foot high enough, well, you could fall. I've fallen a few times, and it's like, okay, I got to figure it out. So you just have to persevere, I guess. And they in a rehab, they're like, oh, you can go on disability. I'm like, for what? Why would I want to be on disability? And they're like, well, because you don't have a left leg. And I go, okay, but how much is disability?
Yes.
I go, I can make more than that when I go back to work. And I do make more than that going to work. And they're just like, yeah, but just think how easy it would be. I go, sit around and do nothing.
Yep.
I go, I'm just not that type of person. So I got it in my head that I'm gonna persevere through it and go back to work. I work every day. A lot of people have no idea, unless I mention it to them, or they inquire. Oh, I'm just saying, you know what? I don't want that to be a focus. I don't want people to look at me and say, why did this happen? Or do you want the people to, change their views of who you are?
Yes.
Because of it. And, I don't. I just, every day is a new challenge, but every day I lay down and go to sleep, and, I'm at peace with myself. And
it's a gift in and of itself.
Right.
That. It's interesting. With my accident, I ended up with vestibular damage. And so my balance is permanently impacted. So little things like you mentioned, uneven sidewalks. I never realized before how uneven sidewalks are. And I don't fall as much now, but I used to fall a lot for that exact reason. It's weird how little bitty things, stairs are brutal. I still am super scared. I've fallen down enough times going downstairs that like it terrified me. I'm like the white knuckler the entire way down, because it is weird how little things like, well, not little things, like, but it is weird how things like that give you a whole different perspective of the world. And gratitude for the fact, I on a daily basis remind myself of how lucky I am to have a body that does function as well as this one does. And I'm grateful for that, because that is an awesome thing to have. I love on that.
I like I said, there's good, bad with the mindset and things like that, and how people look at it. And, overall, it's sometimes a gift that you went through something like that, because now you can learn to appreciate things. I've learned to appreciate a lot of things that I took for granted.
Yeah.
But just being able to, have a second or third chance at life. I forgot how many I'm at by now, but you look at that and it's like, if you can still be a gift to, your children, if you can still be a gift to those around you, it comes with sacrifices. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There's sacrifices that were made, by my own doings, but, sometimes you find peace in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that in doing these interviews, I'm learning so much about the importance of that mindset, of realizing that, it's not about a perfect path. It's about taking whatever the path is that you've got and learning how to find the beauty and the flow in that, because there's no such thing as a perfect path. None of us have had a perfect life. And, everybody's got their challenges, whether they're self-made, whether they come from the outside, whatever the challenge may be. It's not about going through and having a charmed life. It's about taking whatever it is that has been pitched your way and turning it into a charmed life with the choices and the actions that you take on a day-to-day basis.
I agree, and life is what we make of it. I've talked to people, here in the United States and abroad that are amputees or just having a down day, and they're like, how can you pick me up? And just listening to what their stories are and just being able to be there for them, that, because they don't want to go see a counselor, they don't want to see a therapist, but just somebody that can help them get through some of the day-to-day struggles that they have.
Yeah.
And, that's more rewarding, because, then they'll reach out, on social media and be like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, good. How are you doing? How's everything? Have you done XYZ since we talked last time? And they're like, yeah. And so, I mean, there's different rewards that you get day to day from people that, without, being the focus of attention. It's sometimes being there for people.
Yes. And standing in your truth and being open and honest about who you are and what challenges you have. It's interesting how often I hear from people that my sharing of something that I'm struggling with, and in the moment, I'm not thinking, okay, let me share this challenge and it's going to impact people. In the moment, it's how I'm processing it. And I'm like, I'm going to share this because I know that I'm going to look back at this in a year and it will be really cool to be able to see how far I've come in that time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing how often I hear from people, thank you for being open and honest about this thing. This thing that you're struggling with in the moment really helped me with my own struggles. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity, especially as successful people, but also just as people in general, the more we stand in our truth, the more we're open and honest about the things that we are experiencing that people don't usually talk about. As you made the point earlier about like how social media is so much of a list of hits that aren't even always real. When people are real about their struggles and their challenges, but also about how they turn that into success. That's where it gives an example for others to learn from and grow from.
Well, I think people are afraid to get out of their comfort zones.
Yes.
You know, like we discussed earlier, is, you know, how do you get past certain things? And when you do, what's that look like? You know, because, you know, we've got this idealistic way of looking at things that, you know, 2.5 kids, the white picket fence, you know, but it's the struggles that, you know, you look back at what your parents sacrificed. You know, when I was growing up, you know, I didn't understand their sacrifices. And now I look back and I'm like, wow, they sacrificed a lot for us back then. And, you know, I'm doing the same for my kids, you know, learning as, you know, we grow. I mean, as we get older, people are like, well, are you done learning? And I'm like, no, you never stop learning.
One of the things that's cool is that you're now a life coach. And like, what do you think, based upon your experience as a life coach, what do you think are the most important teachings that when you talk with people, what do you think are the things that you're like, yep, these things are consistently the pieces that make a difference?
Just listening what they're, you know, as a life coach, you know, because I've been a therapist, I've been a counselor, and, you know, you're always telling people what to do sometimes, you know, as a life coach, we're walking that journey with them and being able to understand where they're coming from, and then being able to relate to it on some levels if you can, and then being able to, well, have you tried this? You know, have you tried this? Where they're the ones that are coming up with the ways to fix things or to provide suggestions for themselves. And when they hear it, they're like, oh yeah, you know, and so a lot of times it's just simple guidance.
So easy sometimes. When I decided to launch podcasts, I know nothing about podcasting. I know nothing about podcasting. I was like, sure, I'll record some interviews and we'll figure it out. And it's a whole lot more complicated than that.
Right.
But when you look at any task, they often feel insurmountable up front. You know, I throw myself at stuff all the time that up front I'm like, this is stupid. This is crazy. Only a crazy person would do this. And I'm like, and I always kind of remind myself, okay, so when I've done this, will I feel better for having done it? And it's amazing how often I learn how to fly in midair after I've thrown myself off a cliff. Because as you said, it's little steps. Success is not a huge, you know, it's not this huge boulder that you figure out how to pick up and boom, you're successful. It's a million tiny little bitty rocks that you pick up on the way, and sometimes you drop them. But it is, you know, it's little bitty steps the whole way through. That it's the simple act of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, like you mentioned earlier, to get that momentum going. And then once that momentum is going, it's a whole lot easier to maintain momentum once it's built than it is to start all over again. Everything that you want is outside of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is what you see in front of you right now. So if there's something in your life that you want that's outside of your comfort zone, or that you want that's different from what you have right now, you have to get good at saying, okay, you know what? I know that's uncomfortable. I'm going to do it anyway, because what I want is not within this existing zone that I've got built around me. And back when I had my accident, and the reason why I named my account Caroline's Adventure was I decided to, on a daily basis, do something that was outside of my comfort zone. And I realized life is an adventure. You know, it's not about hang gliding one day and then rappelling a cliff the next day. It's about embracing the adventure of life, and on a daily basis, you know, taking a different route home from the grocery store than you normally do, turning the radio off and looking at what's around you as you drive, having an interesting discussion with a total stranger. It is, you know, what you said earlier, it is about just letting people be seen and in the moment with them. And it isn't a huge, you never know who you're helping or who you're impacting just by sharing your story and being open with them. People that are going to judge regardless. And they're going to judge based upon their frame of reference. And so, end of the day, I've got to live the life that I live for me. And the judgment, like, if it's going to come, it's going to come. But I can't let that shift my focus or I can't let that shift how I walk in my life. Because, you know, the moment you start dancing to someone else's beat is the moment that you completely lose the rhythm. You know, you've got to just trust the fact that, you know what, I'm white and I may not be great at dancing, but I'm still going to dance my own beat. It's all good. Like, people I used to get a lot of requests to do TikTok dance videos. I'm like, no, that is not good. That is not what you want to see. Trust me. Like, no.
maybe it's entertaining.
It would definitely be funny. I love this. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time and sending me the bio. And as I said, you've done some really cool stuff.
Thank you. And you as well.
Have an amazing rest of your Friday.
Thank you. You too.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Caroline's Adventure podcast. While you're here, subscribe to the show so you're the first to catch new episodes when they're released. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me today, please leave a 5-star rating. For links to social media and more content, visit the description for this episode or go to carolinesadventure.com. That's Caroline with 2 A's, adventure.com.